Today is August the 19th, 2009. We're here at the Virgins United Methodist Church to do a third documentary in the history of the United Methodist Church in Virgins Township. The Virgins United Methodist Church is on the list of the Michigan Registered Historic Sites. And in the early 1860s, the Virgins Methodist congregation decided to build a permanent place of worship and appointed Charles Collar, A.R. Hoyt, and T. Kretz to the building committee. In 1864, Smith Bailey, a prominent local farmer, donated the land for the church. Completed in 1864, the white clapboard structure with its simple design reflects the eastern origins of its founders. By 1886, the church had been in continuous service for a century. And now for the rest of the story. In 1843, a group of 12 immigrants from New England and Western New York State founded the First Methodist Episcopal Church of Virgins, originally part of the circuit running from Grand Rapids to Boston, Michigan. The group first met at the log house of Anthony Yerkes. Later, it used the Yerkes and Bailey log schools. Surnames of many of the pioneer parishioners, Fairchilds, Kerr, McPherson, Odell, Beery, Anderson, still graced the church's rolls in 1886. Today, Roger Odell will be interviewing Mike Myckoviak, an older member of this church, and will be telling us stories of the past history of this church. And it will indicate how this church and its steeple have pointed the way for all the people of this Virgins rural community.
Hello, my name is Roger Odell, and I'm going to act as the facilitator this morning, and we're talking to Mike Myckoviak.
Oh, yeah.
That's how my family always said it. Is that the correct pronunciation of your name?
Myckoviak.
Myckoviak.
Yes.
And does that have what type of a name? What ethnic
it's
heritage?
a Polish name.
Okay.
Now, a lot of the Polish names have been changed one way or another. Because of the spelling, and mine was no exception. Mine was Myckowiak. If it were pronounced that way, it's Myckoviak. See the difference?
Myckoviak.
That Z is just like an S.
Okay.
In that sequence.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be I would either be a Myckoviak or a Myckoviak. Whichever I please.
Okay.
Well, the kids, when I was teaching, I was really mean to very mean to all the students, because I said to them, no, I'm going to try and remember by the end of the week everybody's first name. I said, and you're going to have to learn how to spell my name. And so I put it on the board, and I said, tomorrow, you have your first test. Spell my name. Is going to be the only question on the test. You either get an A or an E. Now you decide whether you want an A on your first test or an E on your first test. And out of the hundreds of kids that I had, only one got an E.
Oh, really?
They all learned to spell it and pronounce it, and without any trouble. And I had just hundreds of very, very nice kids.
Sure.
you know, and so I don't have any complaints about that because I started teaching in 1946 in Grand Rapids.
In Grand Rapids schools.
Yeah.
Which one?
At Union High School.
Union High School. Okay.
And Union High School is that one red brick building that you see when you're on the freeway now. And so the building is still there, but I think that it's used for evening classes.
Okay. What did you teach at that time?
I taught General Metals.
General Metals. Okay.
Yeah, and part of the time I helped in the wood shop. So
Okay.
so if their schedule for the shop teacher was too full, and mine wasn't quite as full for metal, then I might have taught a class in wood shop there.
Okay. Yeah.
So I did that.
Some of us knew your parents here in Virgins Township,
Right.
and so you grew up in Virgins Township, didn't you?
Well, no. I think it was a week or the month after I was born, Mom and Dad moved to Grand Rapids.
Oh, okay.
To 419 Bradford Street.
Mm-hmm.
And then we moved back here. I think it was my first year at junior college, so that'd be 1946, and because the Thanksgiving of 1946 was a very cold, miserable day, and Dad, and I, and my brother, that Michael's dad, and Johnny Evils, the four of us were putting shingles on that house on Thanksgiving Day. That's how I remember it.
On the house on Bailey Drive at the end of Bailey and Lincoln Lake? Okay.
Yeah. And it was just a miserable day. And then the following Sunday was the first Sunday that I attended here.
That would have been 1946 in November, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And so Mother, that morning, the house there on Bailey Drive was still pretty rough, but we stayed overnight and we had breakfast there. And my mother said, well, I don't care what we're doing or how busy we are, we're going to church today.
Good.
And so we did.
And you came here?
Yep, came here. And I can't remember whether there were 10 or 12.
Okay.
Not counting the three that came with Mother and Dad.
Yeah.
And so, but it was about 10 or 12 people.
Okay.
And that was the congregation at that time.
Do you remember the pastor's name?
I can't remember if it was Carpenter or which one it was.
Okay. Yeah. So you were born. Where were you born then?
I was born in a rickety house right at the corner of Bailey Drive.
Oh.
They moved out of that and into a house in Grand Rapids because Dad had a job at Berkey and Gay Furniture Company.
Okay.
And so rather than, and at that time, I'm sure they wouldn't be driving that much.
That would have been a long ways, yeah.
For work. So.
And what year was that?
That would have 1924.
1924. You were born in a rickety house on Bailey Drive.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And after they moved out, no one ever lived in the house again.
Okay.
And it just went downhill, as you can well imagine.
Was that house at the same location as the house that you
it's
shared
right
on Thanksgiving?
It's exactly on the basement, on the same basement. Of course, different walls.
Oh, okay, sure.
Sure, but it's exactly the same spot.
Good. Oh, okay. And so then you, your parents, your dad worked at the furniture factory in Grand Rapids.
Berkey and Gay Furniture.
And what was it called?
Berkey and Gay.
Okay, Berkey and Getty.
And Berkey and Gay can be compared to one of the best production factories for General Motors. They made a lot of very beautiful furniture.
Oh yeah.
It was high price, and it was beautiful stuff.
Okay.
I have a few pieces myself, but but not much anymore.
Okay. Where were your ancestors from? Then you said Polish name.
Yeah. No, I don't. All I know is if her mother is she came from Durand. Her
From where?
Durand.
Durand.
Right there by Flint.
Oh, okay.
And he was an engineer on the railroad, and so he had a permanent job there. And mother's dad's my grandfather came from Poland, and he came through New York and through Staten Island, and so and when he came, he had been married once in Poland and had one child, and then when they moved here, but then I can't remember whether they had 10. I think they had 11, and plus the first one.
11. Okay, and then one of those would have been your father.
Yes.
Mike.
He was the oldest male.
The oldest boy, and he was born here then?
Yes. He was born in Bay City.
Okay. Did they speak Polish in the home then when he was a boy?
No, mother wasn't Polish and couldn't understand it, so we never learned. The language that we should use in front of people. I know that I learned a few words that I shouldn't.
Okay, yeah.
Like children will learn them.
Right.
You know. So, but it was no, my dad was a very gentle person.
Yes, he was. I knew him.
A very, very gentle person. And he loved each one of us. And mother did too, but dad was always very, very gentle with all of us. I don't recall my dad even giving me a swat on the bottom.
Wow.
I don't recall even that much of it.
Yeah.
You know.
Sure. Yeah.
He never raised his hand to my mother nor any one of us kids.
Yeah. What was your mother's maiden name?
Darby. D-A-R-B-Y.
Okay.
And he worked at one of the metal plants in Grand Rapids, and I don't know which one it was.
Okay.
So.
And what was your brother? You had a brother?
Laverne.
Pardon me?
Laverne.
Laverne.
His dad. That Michael's dad.
That Michael's dad. Okay. And that Michael's dad that he's referring to is one of the 4 generations of Myckoviaks that we have talked about, that we have in the picture in front of us here. And Mike, if you would join us for a minute, it would be great if you could point out the people in this picture and the one that's missing from this picture.
Thank you, Roger. This is
Leave it setting where it is, if you would, please.
This is a generation picture of the 4 mics that was taken in about 1975. I believe that was the occasion was a wedding of one of my sisters. And so I realized that there were 4 of us. We were all here. Grandfather was at that time about 90 years old. So I asked to have this picture taken. And since then, we've lost a mic. Grandfather passed away in 1985, but I have a grandson, Mike, also. He's now 17 years old, so there are still four mics.
Yeah.
Point out each picture.
Yeah.
No, just leave it set where it is.
Okay.
That's there. And then he can focus on it.
Okay, well, we have...
Which one are you in that picture?
Well, I'm this guy here in this
Okay.
blue leisure suit, believe it or not. And this is my son, Michael. This is grandfather, who we call Big Mike.
Yeah.
And this is Uncle Mike.
Yeah.
And we don't have a picture. It would be nice to get another generation picture.
Yeah.
With my grandson.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can do that sometime. But
And I have one that I sent you to of most of the kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
You sure did.
And that was taken on when we lived in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we know that you had one brother.
Yeah.
And
4 sisters.
pardon me.
4 sisters.
And 4 sisters.
4 sisters.
And one
I
brother.
was the last one.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. And you talk about birth control, they must have had something pretty good because we were all about 2 years apart. And so whatever they did, why they made sure that there were 2 years between.
Oh, sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so you lived most of your childhood in Grand Rapids.
Yes, at 419 Bradford Street.
Oh, on Bradford Street. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. And what school did you attend?
I attended. Well, I was the first students at Eastern Avenue Elementary School. I was the first.
Mhm.
I was the first kindergarten group there,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and then I left. I attended there until I went to Central High School, and I graduated from Central High School in 1942.
Okay. And your brother and sisters then probably already had. Is that
Yes,
right? Okay.
yes.
Mhm.
And I think that every one of them either attended or graduated from Central High School.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Then when you graduated from high school, then did you go on to college? And
Yes, I went to Grand Rapids Junior College,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and then I went to Western Michigan University and graduated from there.
Okay.
And then I mentioned to you before that my first year as a teacher in Grand Rapids, I got $1,800 for the year.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
not very much
For
to
the
live
whole
on.
year. No, it's
No.
not. It's
And,
not.
and I don't.
That would have been what year?
Well, that would have been 1947.
1947.
Mhm.
Okay.
47 and 48.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you said when you attended church here on a cold Thanksgiving weekend, when
Right.
you had shingled your house on Thanksgiving Day, and then you attended that following Sunday.
Yes.
Was that the first time you attended church
That's
here?
the first time I attended church
Okay.
here.
And
See, I would have been a first year at Grand Rapids Junior College, so that would have been 1946.
1946, and it
Mhm.
was your mother and father and your brother and you.
Well, no, not my brother didn't come.
Okay.
He was already married and living in Grand Rapids.
Oh, okay.
And
I misunderstood
so
that. Mhm.
we came, the 3 of us, and on that Sunday, like I said, it was a cold morning, and there was a wood stove at the back of the church. Now it's the front, and then what was the front of the church, which is now the back, there was also another big wood stove.
Mhm.
And Mel McPherson was here, and my mother said, she said, well, I'm glad the church is warm. And Mr. McPherson said, as long as there are 2 people attending, there will always be wood for the stove.
Mm-hmm. Good.
I think sometimes that the McPhersons who've been here so long are not as they're not pushy, and I think sometimes their past is not given the honor that it might have had.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because without Mel McPherson, this church would never be here.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It never would exist.
Yes.
Never would survive.
Sure. Mm-hmm. He did a lot for the church.
He
Didn't
did a lot for the church.
Mhm.
A lot.
That's right. I've heard that from a number of people that
Yeah.
attended back then, that he
Yeah.
did a lot to keep the church going and
Yeah, he
helped
did.
out with things like that wood and coal for the
Yeah.
stoves. And,
Yeah, yeah.
mhm.
So
So then you moved into Grand Rapids, but you built a house on Bailey and Lincoln Lake.
Yeah.
And so did you live in that house and attend church here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
And your father and mother attended
Yeah.
church
Mhm.
here?
Yes.
Okay. And they made a lot of contributions and donations
Yes.
themselves, didn't they, to
Yes,
this
they did.
church? Mhm.
Yes, it's kind of interesting to note the cross is in honor of my dad on the altar.
Mhm.
And a real strange story related to all the furniture that's up there. Because I was teaching at Union High School, and they were starting to do the freeway going through Grand Rapids,
Mhm.
North-South Freeway, and I saw a sign that the furniture at the church on 2nd Avenue was going to be all auctioned off. And so I told Johnny, my brother-in-law, Gladys's husband, that they had some furniture that I wanted to look and see whether we could get it, because we needed to set some things for here.
Sure.
And so Johnny said, "Okay, let's go." So we went over Saturday morning, and we were the first people in Second Church here, and to buy anything. And so I said, "Well," I said, "How much would all the furniture that's on the platform? How much would that all cost?" And he says, "Well," he said, "it depends." He says, "Do you mind telling me how much you were willing to pay for it?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "How about $47? Because that's what I had in my pocket." And he said, "That's a good price for me."
Isn't that interesting?
I bought everything that was up there: the pulpit, the chair, communion table, all of those, and that was all made there in Grand Rapids.
Wow.
At which one furniture factory was it over there on the west side? That makes church furniture and stuff. And Michigan, is it Michigan Furniture? Something like
I
that.
don't know.
Grand Rapids Furniture. It's a big factory. Big. They're still going. And so I got all of those. And then he said, "Well," he said, "it looks like all I'm going to have are just the pews that are left." And Johnny said, "What?" And they went to Epworth Church at that time, Johnny and Gladys, at a small church in Grand Rapids, Epworth. And so Johnny said, "Well, how much do you want for all the pews?" And he said, "Well, how much have you got to buy them?" He said, "I got $40. He said, "You got them." 20 pews for $40. Beautiful pews.
Isn't that
Beautiful pews.
interesting?
Well, he took those to Epworth Church, and we brought, and the furniture that we got that was on the pulpit here, a lot of it looked a little bit like it had been moved quite often, and it had battle scars on it, so to speak, and furniture pieces where they were nicked and whatnot. And so so when Johnny and I brought the pieces for here, we put them in his garage in Lowell. And my dad says, "Well," he said, my chisels are sharp. I'll repair it."
Great.
And so he was not a carver as such, but having worked in a furniture factory for 60 years,
Sure.
he did everything. And so he repaired them, and they're the way they look today, and they're beautiful because they look like they're new.
Yeah, they do.
They were all repaired and sanded, and if there was something that needed a piece added on, Dad would add it on and carve it. And so, and then he refinished those one piece at a time.
Wow. Yeah.
And he had a little trailer that he put on the back of his car, and every Sunday he'd bring a piece here and have it ready. Well, the people here got kind of interested. Well, wonder what Mike is going to bring today,
Sure.
And so it was fun. He had a good time doing it.
Sure,
You know,
yeah.
it was fun time.
Yeah. I think that most of the altar pieces here are pieces that your family has donated to the church. Could we go in to the sanctuary and you point those out?
Well, it's everything that's up there.
Okay, it'd be nice to get a picture of that if we could pause for a minute and move in there.
Well, or later you can get it too. No problem.
Okay.
At one of the meetings, right shortly after which the furniture came, my mother said, "Well, we need either a good piano or an organ." She said the old piano that's here has seen its days,
Mm-hmm.
and she said that I'd like to see an organ, and so organs were rather expensive, and the board says, "Well, we don't have money to buy an organ or a piano," and my mother says, "Well, maybe we could get some contributions from the business people downtown and buy one." And they said, "Well, Florence, if you want to do that, you go ahead." So if you can imagine a little old lady who if she stretched herself out a little, would probably be 4'10", 4'11", and she went up and down the street in Lowell and got contributions. Well, she counted her money when she'd been on Main Street, and she liked $25 of having enough, $50 enough to have to buy a small organ, not a great big one, but one.
Mm-hmm.
They had it here for a long time, and she said that she decided that she'd go to the one had the King Milling Company,
Mm-hmm.
and she went in and see him if he'd make a contribution, and he said, "Well, how much are you short of having the money you need to buy the organ that you want?" She said, $50. He said, "Here it is."
Isn't that interesting? That was King Doyle from King Milling Company?
What? Yes, King Milling Company.
Okay, mm-hmm. King Milling
Now
Company.
I don't remember which one it was.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But of course, some of the older people here would know who that
Sure.
the CEO was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And but that was a cute little.
That is. That's
cute
very
little
interesting. And
You know,
so,
sometimes we think that nowadays if we don't have a committee working on something, nothing's going to happen. Well, that's not true in a church.
sure.
If people have a lot of individual rights and a lot of individuality,
Mm-hmm.
and their purpose can be matched with something in the church.
That's right.
Like
That's
this
right.
one,
Mm-hmm.
and you talk about expanding here, and all of the things that have gone on here, and so this little church holds a lot of memories.
Yes, it does. It certainly does. That would have been the church's first organ, wouldn't it?
Yes.
And it was an organ rather than a piano.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember who played it at that time?
Gladys, my sister.
Your sister Gladys played it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And she lived around here?
Well, she lived in Grand Rapids.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And, but she and my brother-in-law Johnny came every Sunday, and she played the organ.
And what was her last name?
Evils, Ebels.
Gladys Evils. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And she played that for a long, long time.
Yes, a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she came here and attended for a long time, didn't she?
Yes.
Drove out just to play the piano
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and the organ.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yeah.
Do you remember what year that was that they bought the organ?
I don't remember that.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Since we're talking about your sister, I missed the names of your siblings.
Mm-hmm.
Can you start with the oldest and name them
Yes.
for us?
Lucille, my oldest sister. Laverne, that Michael's father. Then Evelyn. you, 6?
No.
No? All right, let me go back. Lucille, Laverne, Evelyn, Arlene, Gladys, and me.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
All nice names.
Well, it's all good names. of
Sure,
course.
you bet.
Yeah.
You bet, yes.
Yeah.
It would be nice if we could step in there and you could point out the furniture that's on the altar that that your family has donated
All
to
right.
the church. That would be very
All
nice.
right.
If we could
Okay.
take a little pause.
Sure.
Mike and I have stepped into the church sanctuary, and we're up here in the altar area, and we'd like to point out some of the things that his family has so generously donated to the Virginia's church. So, Mike, would you point out some of these things for us?
Sure. It's so pleasing because the cross was donated in honor of my dad, and each piece here, the candlestick holders, the cross, the contribution dishes, were all donated by the family, and it's nice to have it in a little space like this.
Yes.
But the joy is, well, I've done metalwork too, metalwork and woodworking, and look how beautiful the cross is,
It is. That's correct.
and the candlestick holders.
Yeah, they certainly are.
And I can look at the front of these, and I can see spots where they were, where things were bumped against the post here, and my dad, with his sharp chisels, redid some of the carpenter work, or some of the woodworking work on these, and refinished the table, and so his handiwork is here.
Mm-hmm.
He's gone, but
Mm-hmm.
his handiwork is
Sure. Isn't that nice? Yeah.
here.
Yeah. A timeless piece.
That's nice to know
Yes, it is.
that things that we do live long after us, and although we've never donated a large amount of money at any one time for anything like this, and it's been the family has put in small amounts, and so that we had enough in it to do some of these things that were nice
Sure.
for the church.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful that the family has been generous.
And we are too.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much for your
You bet.
generosity.
It
of your
means a
family.
lot to me.
You bet. And then behind you here, we're going to just point out this baptismal font that is the most recent, this in the picture that we had mentioned earlier that your family had donated.
Right.
How nice that is.
Yeah, it is. It's a nice font.
A nice addition to the church. We appreciate it very much.
And I can't imagine that Johnny and I brought this from Grand Rapids one Sunday morning, and before that they had maybe this was not new, but all they had was just a small pulpit up here, and so this is a very attractive piece of furniture too.
It certainly is.
Yeah. And the chair, I know it has some things on the side, and now if you look at it, you can't see any of it,
Yeah.
and they were all repaired.
Yeah, they look brand new, don't they?
Yes, they do. They do. They look, but that they look new because they've been kept up too.
That's right.
So, and I'm just thankful that they have been cared for and have had better service here than they had in the previous.
Sure, that's right. Yeah. Yes.
All right,
Yeah.
you betcha. And thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, and thanks
I
for
appre-
being here, Mike.
Well, I enjoyed it, and like I say, I just miss my wife not being here with me.
Oh, I'm sure you do. Yeah, I'm sure that you do. let's talk a little bit more about memories of the church that you have. We have some notes here, and when you attended church here, you lived down at the end of Bailey Drive.
Yeah.
You had a car that you drove here.
Yes.
The family car.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
No horses. They were still using horses.
No, he didn't have horses at that time. Before they had moved to Grand Rapids, they had a team of horses.
Okay.
And his big crop was potatoes every year.
Okay.
And he always had a passion for certain kind of potatoes, and so he would take a wagon load at a time into Grand Rapids and sell them right house to house, and he sold all of his potatoes that way.
Okay. Interesting.
But pulling that with two horses, digging them and cleaning them and getting them ready to go on a Saturday morning.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, be a real challenge.
That'd be a day's work, wouldn't it?
You're darn right it would be. Yeah.
When you came to church here, we parked right out in front of the church at the time along the road.
Yeah.
And then a few cars on the west side.
Yes.
Would be parked there.
Yeah.
And the sanctuary was turned around.
Yes.
Then when we remodeled in '99, we
reversed.
We reversed. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And you came in the south doors.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned it was nice and warm because the McPhersons had made sure they started the fires.
Yeah.
In the two stoves.
Yeah.
And you had a piano that was played, and later an organ by your sister that your family had donated.
Mrs. Ryder, R-Y-D-E-R.
Peg Ryder.
Peg Ryder played the piano.
Yes.
For a long time.
Yes.
And then when she decided that she didn't want to play it anymore, then Gladys played it.
Then Gladys, your sister Gladys, played it.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Peg Ryder did play it for a long, long time. Yeah, they lived down on Bailey, east of here, about a mile and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peg and Sam Ryder.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of the other families that attended church here?
I'm trying to remember names other than McPherson. The first ones up here had a nice dairy farm. And what was their name, the first ones there? First farm on this side.
Oh, here?
Uh-huh.
Odell?
Odell's.
Okay.
Odell's.
Yeah, that was my family.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the girls' names that lived just up the road. They had three girls, Alice and Barb and one other one.
The Heilmans?
Heilmans.
Yes.
Right. Heilmans. And then on the next road over south, the one that had the big apple orchard there, I can't say their last name.
Roth?
Pardon?
Roth?
Yes, Roth.
That's the Roth.
And then another one that lived just over here, and he worked for the County Road Commission. And he always made sure that the roads, if it was slippery or bad, he always made sure somewhere or another that the road was either salted or cleaned so that cars could get in.
Okay. Was that Mueller's?
Pardon?
Was it Mueller?
Yes.
Ed Mueller.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And they had two boys, I think.
Oh, those would have been the sons. Ed would have been the son, yes.
Uh-huh.
That's right.
Yeah.
It was one of the boys. I don't remember the dad's name.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I had heard that before. That's how we actually started the park here in the west side, and the county used to keip that plowed out for the trucks.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
That's good influence, wasn't it?
I'm sure that was not legal.
No, it probably wasn't, but back then...
But it was always done.
That's right. It was always done to help the church out.
Yeah, it sure did.
Sure.
Yeah. But those are some of the cute little things that comes back to mind. But I know that the Roths with their apples, when you came on Sunday, there was always a big if not a bushel basket full, at least a big box of apples. And it would always be right by the door.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody took an apple before they left.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, when apples were ripe and
Sure.
they
In the fall.
always had a box of apples. And everybody could have one on the way out.
And the Roths brought those.
Uh-huh.
Okay, isn't that nice?
Yeah. Yeah.
And at that time, we entered and exited through the doors on the south end of the sanctuary.
Yes.
And there was a foyer right where now we have the
Yes.
altar area,
Uh-huh.
wasn't there?
Right.
And a coat rack and things
Yeah,
like
uh-huh.
that, yes. And then this building, do you remember when this addition was put on? This room we're in was
Yes.
added.
I can't remember the years. Because it was after I was married, and I added this on, and the only ones that could tell you probably that you had come close to perfect date is the ones that live just down across the street over here.
The Kerrs?
Kerrs.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
They'd be able to tell you that.
We needed to ask them those exact years when,
Uh-huh.
because this was added on in 2 or 3 stages, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And prior to that, when you came in the 40s and the 50s, there was no running water here.
No.
Was there an outhouse?
No, there was not. If you needed to use the outhouse, the township had Johns that were outside ones.
That's
Just
right.
across the
They
street.
did. That's correct.
Yeah.
I had forgotten that. You're right. They did. They had the outhouses over there that
Yes,
you
they
really
did.
had to
Yeah.
you would go there.
Yeah.
But it was a long time that this church existed before there were any
Oh.
restroom
Oh
facilities
yes.
or any running water.
Oh,
Isn't that
yes, a
surprising?
long time.
Yeah. And today, when we attend church, why we always have coffee and
Oh, sure.
warmed up items and things
Oh,
like
sure.
that so it's a
Yeah.
lot different than back then. Yeah.
And what was the McPherson's Donald's wife's name?
Allura?
Allura.
Mm-hmm.
Always made sure that there was coffee or rolls or something
Yes.
here, and she was really a very precious lady,
Yes.
a very precious person.
Yes, she was. Very much so.
Yeah, but there were so many that were that did that just went out of their way to do something for this church.
Correct.
All
Keep it going.
all of the ladies were very active.
They were.
Yeah.
They certainly were.
Yeah.
And she did a lot, and I know many of the items in our kitchen she got for the church from
Yeah.
the YMCA because she was a manager at the YMCA for many, many years.
Yes.
And our stove and our hood and an old refrigerator, items you may have remembered that when they first put this addition on were quite ritzy for this church, weren't
Yeah,
they? Nice
yeah, they
stainless
were.
steel items.
Oh yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever come out, you were teaching at the time, did you ever come here and get any of their apple dumplings that they had for years and years that the church
Oh
would sell?
yes, Laura did that.
Yes, she did, yeah.
Um, Oh yeah. Well, that when apples got ripe or close to ripe, you'd know that there'd be apple dumplings on Sunday. Yes, just that was just a standard. That was
It
just
was a standard
thing.
treat, wasn't it?
Yes,
that's
yeah.
right.
But to do that kind of thing, week after week, would be a real challenge.
It would be, certainly.
You know? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you reflect any more on the neighborhood, the Virgins Township here, how it's changed since your childhood days?
Well, when I was driving down here, there's not a farm on the road here, coming here or going west, coming from the east or coming from the west. There's not a farmhouse that looks dilapidated.
That's right. You're correct.
You check that out, and the ones coming from the north or the south, they're all look prosperous.
They do, don't they? You're
They do.
correct.
And during the Depression, during the all of the 1920s, farmers had a terrible, if what they didn't grow, they didn't have.
That's right.
You
You're
know,
right.
It was almost impossible for them to have money to quote
Mm-hmm.
buy things
Mm-hmm.
to eat or and I and it was a very usual thing to see a sign out on half a dozen of the farms, eggs for sale, or apples for
Mhm.
sale, or milk
Mm-hmm.
for sale. And I think that the amount of money that they got from passing cars, passing families, they survived. They
Yes.
survived on egg money.
Yes. Yes, that's right. They did.
And that's hard to believe today.
That is.
What, how could a family survive on just selling eggs here now? You
That's
couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
But during the Depression, they made it.
sure.
Mm-hmm. And eggs were a penny a piece.
A penny a piece, so 12 cents a dozen.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like, you were paid $1,800 for an entire year, so.
Yeah. So that it measures it probably.
Yeah.
But
that's, wow, isn't that
it's just
interesting?
amazing. And I can remember when they first moved back, Mother had bought 50 chickens, and so she sold eggs on the corner there for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and they had one cow, and Dad would milk it every morning and night, and they had a separator, and the butter fat, they made butter.
Sure.
And during the war, it doesn't sound like much at the moment, but every one of us got butter. All 6 kids. When we could have about a half a pound a week,
Wow. Mm-hmm.
which was a real gift,
Sure.
at that time, because you had to use a coupon to buy butter, and
So it was rationed during
it was
the war.
rationed, yes, and having homemade butter on the table every week.
Would be a real treat. wouldn't
Oh, be a real treat.
it? Yeah, that's interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
And that was all down at your parents' house at the end of Bailey Drive on Lincoln
Yes.
Lake. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
50 chickens, 1 cow,
Yeah,
potatoes.
yeah.
Okay, that was quite a. Do you remember how many acres they had
Well,
down there?
they started with 80, and
Okay,
then they
mhm.
sold it off
Okay.
piece by piece.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting. When did you marry?
When did I marry?
Yes,
I married in 1947.
1947.
Mm-hmm.
And your wife's name?
Phyllis.
Phyllis.
Mhm.
Okay. And
And she passed away March of 06.
of 06. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have children?
Yes, we have 2 children, a boy and a girl, Scott and Holly.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott is a manager for auto owners, and Holly is an administrator for a big medical outfit in Indianapolis. I can't remember, Pfizer, I think it is.
What was Phyllis's full name?
Sowers, Sowers, and her dad teased her. He said he couldn't imagine anybody marrying somebody with a Polish name like Myckoviak when they had that good German name of Sowers.
Sowers. Mm-hmm. Where did you meet her?
I met her at a meeting at Western Michigan University. It was I can't remember, but it was I think it was a dance, and I didn't dance a lot. I'd learned to dance better after we were married, and so I met her there, and then she did not attend a college. I took several classes later, but not before we were married.
Okay, I see. And can you tell us about your children? Any more about them? What is your daughter?
My daughter is the one that lives in Indianapolis.
Indianapolis, okay.
And Scott lives in Lansing.
In Lansing.
Scott lives right in Charlotte.
In Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you teach school?
Well, first I taught at Union High School, and then Harrison Park Junior High, and then Ridgeview Junior High.
Okay. And where do you live now?
I live in Charlotte.
Near your son?
Yes, not too far away.
Not too far away.
Yeah,
Okay.
a couple miles away.
Okay, good. Then you told us that you were a teacher, and that's how you
Yes.
you were in the metals shop and
Yes.
woodworking.
Right.
Did you teach any other?
Well, I was the community school director at Coldwater, and I was also the vocational dean at Glen Oaks Community College.
Okay.
And then I was the director for off-campus programs for Western Michigan University.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, you've had a very full career, haven't you? Yeah, that's great.
I taught once. I taught a single class, more than repeated the class at Western on developing community school programs. And the first time I taught the class, I thought, well, they'll have a class of 25, 30 people. That's no big deal. And so I had my papers all ready for the class. And then I got there that morning early. And I said, how many are in the class? And they said, I think they said 76. And I thought, I couldn't even tear the papers up and make it enough for 76.
Right.
And so they took them and copied them, and they were ready for my class that morning.
That's great.
And so I gave it, but
How did they do with your name?
well, they didn't have any trouble either.
Okay.
No, I put it up on the board, and I told them just like I said to my junior high and senior high kids. No, if they could learn it in one day, I'm sure that you as adults can learn it in one day also. I said, in fact, by the time we leave today, I said, all of you will call me Mr. Mike. They said, that's easier.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
But it was fun.
You've stayed connected. Your family has stayed connected with the church through your many donations and contributions and things, and
Right.
the wonderful things that your family continues to do for this church. And with your explanations and stories, it's a wonderful legacy and heritage of what your parents have
Right.
done and those sorts of things. And I want to point out this plaque that's next to you here on the couch, and we'll get a close up of that. And it says Virginia's United Methodist Church in recognition of the oldest active member, Michael Myckoviak.
Yep.
Now that's
my dad.
That's your dad. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. And that's in July 1974, and it's signed by the pastor at the time was Phil Carpenter. And Richard Densmore was the lay leader at the time, and Donald McPherson was the chairman.
Yeah.
And they've all signed that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
an interesting piece of heritage and your connection to the church.
Gold spot for here.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And she loved this church.
Yeah,
So I love it too.
you bet. Well, that's wonderful, Mike. And it hasn't been that long, and I'm sure that she's proud of you for how much you've shared with us and so generously
Right.
shared with us the memories that you
Right.
have of the church.
Right, for sure. Wonderful. I wish everybody could have had the good experiences with the church that I've had.
I do too. I do too.
I really do.
That's very nice. And
And the pastor here is just exceptional.
he is. Yeah.
He's just a very exceptional person. He has good sermons, and I appreciate coming here Sundays. I wish I could make it more often, but it is about 50 miles here,
Sure.
so you don't make it direct.
Yeah.
You come for special things.
Right.
You know, very special.
Right.
Right.
Well, we look forward to when you're with us again, Mike.
Right.
Thank you very much.
All right.
This Virgins United Methodist Church has been a stronghold for this community in pointing the way of life for this rural Virgins community. The steeple has been a real symbol of life here in Virgins Township.
The following oral military history project is a series of documentaries in association with the Lowell area men and women who proudly served and sacrificed part of their lives to preserve the opportunities for all of us to build our businesses and raise our families under a blanket of freedom. For reservations and more information, contact the Lowell Area Historical Museum at 616-897-7688.